All right, I've been a little delinquent in my Division 2 videos. I did not post a video of taking down Anti, and I'm posting just the last little bits of taking down Stovepipe. So this is going to kind of serve as my final thoughts on those two encounters, as well as my final thoughts on the season as a whole. And I got to say that the story I thought got really, really interesting with Stovepipe. You know, a lot of times in these manhunts, they build up the big bad, the big villain. You get to the end, and they are very cookie cutter, just blind, loyal warriors to Natalia Sokolova. You end up defeating them without much of an issue, rinse and repeat. We've had some minor variants, mostly with Lewis is really the only one that can really stand out that I was like, oh, wow, okay. The main big bad isn't what you thought it was going to be. And in similar fashion, they have decided to do a very similar thing with Stovepipe. If you listen to a lot of the recordings and you kind of followed along with the story this season, it was clear that Stovepipe's loyalty to the cause had wavered, and he was constantly questioning orders. And when we find him, he's dead, which was a really cool twist. He had already been killed by his own group, left for dead to become a martyr, to pin on you, the division. And then obviously it turns into this really nasty Coney Island firefight where you have to work your way out because they set this huge trap up for you, culminating in this insane battle against this mech called Sparkle, which was really, really well done. The problem I have, and you are seeing it here, this gameplay footage was recorded from me playing on my PlayStation 5, which was uploaded on Twitch. The problem here is the engine is really showing its legs. There is a significant amount of bloom effects in this area. And as you're navigating through Coney Island, which is undergoing a hellacious mortar attack, and there's a lot of those turrets that disable your abilities kind of pulsating around the arena, it creates these bloom effects where you just have this overarching sheen of color to the point that you can't even see anything. The bloom is just so oversaturated. So I know there's enemies out there, but look at what I am seeing. Just solid, bright colors of pinks from, you know, the fire, the pinks and the oranges, or the blue lights in the background, or the yellow lights in the background. And it loses a lot of its tension, and it loses a lot of its kind of cinematic appeal when you're looking at a game like this, and it's so hard to tell what's going on. It really does negate a lot of the tension that you're supposed to be feeling, basically set up in this very elaborate death trap in which you are basically, you know, going out to fight and, you know, being set up, realizing that the enemy is turned on themselves, that Stovepipe is not who you thought he was, that he really wasn't as big of a villain as we had thought. Trying to work your way through this manhunt, and you're fighting with these horrendous graphics, and it's just insanely distracting. So unlike a lot of the other seasons that come to an end, killing Stovepipe and exfilling does not signify the end of the mission. In this case, you are immediately removed from your party, and you are sent on a solo mission, which you cannot ask for backup for, directly to Washington, D.C. They'll put you right at the doorsteps, and you're going to basically replay that first opening tutorial again, where you're running up the hill, essentially trying to retake the White House to reestablish your foothold on D.C. This whole mission with Stovepipe, this whole experience was basically set for you to be set up to fail, which was really, really cool. While this is going on, DC is overrun, and it's up to you to come back and to fight back. Now, you'll notice that I got an objective failed screen on there. That is a weird glitch. I did actually die already prior to that. There are no exfils here or respawns or anything. There's no support from any of the NPCs. You can't send out a request for a division agent for help. and you will be fighting a Razorback basically in the front door of DC, which was a really, really cool thing. I liked how they kind of wrapped this season up by going back to the beginning. It's clear that there is some sort of mole and there's some sort of back door, which we will find more about in the next season, I am sure. But basically, the whole idea of you going out and attacking Stovepipe was a ploy to get you away from the White House so that there could be a nasty invasion set up to basically overthrow that. And now you have to fight your way back in. And this is very similar to the opening mission of the original game, except now you are very heavily armored, unlike before when you were basically fighting with just whatever basic gun they gave you. And as I mentioned, we're gonna go up against the Razorback here in a moment. So that was cool. And here I do feel the game engine works well. I think when there's not a lot of over-the-top lighting and particle effects, I think this game engine still looks very, very impressive. I know it's dated. I know they're still running support on the older generation consoles, but there's still some blobs of nasty bloom. I just ran past one there. I don't want to beat up the graphics too much. I didn't find it nearly as distracting as trying to take out Stovepipe and Coney Island, which was just not a fun time. But here I thought this was a good culmination of kind of wrapping up the story. Typically in these games, you are the superhero, right? Your specific player character, yes, you are part of the whole. You are part of the division, this elite fighting force that is, really basically kind of through a lot of lead, essentially keeping Washington, D.C. as safe as you can and rescuing people and building up settlements and stuff like that. It feels like it's been a long time since we were handed a proper loss. Just a genuine proper loss in which we genuinely lost something of value that could not be rebuilt, that we lost some sort of our ideals, or we lost some sort of key ally that genuinely sets us back. And that has always been my major concern with the overarching story of the Division going into the Division 2. No matter how many times we are dealt a setback, it usually somehow ends in this success story where you're fighting against all odds and you go in, you save the day, and life goes on. Here, at the end of this season, I feel like more than any other season, absolutely was a loss. And I was really appreciative that they took a much darker tone. I know that Ubisoft Forward is coming out here, and I know that they already did a roadmap for kind of what to expect in the next season. I did a video on that talking about my thoughts of some of the new game mode and some of the new things we would be doing. They emphasized there would be a lot more focus on settlements, specifically castle, this upcoming season. And I gotta say, as I was playing through the game, I kept thinking to myself thematically, like, how would they do that? How would they force us to go back to the castle when Washington, D.C. is the stronghold and everything is there and we have a nice big juicy shade node and all the players are there and we're safe and everything's good? Well, they found a great way to do that. We lose DC, albeit briefly, but it is heavily compromised on our return. So much so that the enemy kind of gutted and took what they wanted and just left the physical building behind. In hindsight now, thinking through it and recording this video with you guys right now, I think it would have been even cooler if DC remained lost, if this was just a total scuttle mission where we go out there and, the Razorback is there and we just can't break in and we had to leave it behind. I think that would have been a little bit cooler, but I understand that it is a very major hub of the game and realistically probably would have required a significant amount of code or rewriting in the game for all the services that are available exclusively in Washington, D.C., to have all of those vendors be relocated somewhere else and to have those services relocated in another part of the game. That's probably why you kind of like win DC back at the end, but you'll see it is not the same place you remember. That said, I thought it was very, very cool that, our stronghold does get invaded and it continues to paint this picture that Natalia is a major villain that has to be dealt with. I liked that we did have a darker tone. I liked that we did lose the fight. I liked that major allies do not make it out of this fight alive. And it definitely leaves a lot of question marks going forward. Without getting too deep into the lore part of it, there's a lot of little mentions of other characters, and it definitely leaves some doubt on some of the main characters' intentions, knowing that they're fighting essentially compromised now. Manny really comes to mind. I'll be really curious to see how they play that narrative out in the future, particularly since, going into the next season, we don't know who the big bad is going to be. We don't really know what the main battleground is going to be. Again, as I say this with most of my videos that I've been doing now for the last couple seasons, at least on the bigger challenges of the Division 2, I continuously say, hey, I'm shocked that you guys have found a way to kind of make the same areas relevant. And the Division 2 is a very dense game. There is so much to see and do. There are so many interacting and interweaving areas of the map, above ground and below ground, and hidden areas and dungeons and echoes and collectibles that are scattered throughout. So there's a lot to see and do. But it's just one of those things I constantly ask myself, how many times can we go back to the well again? How many times can we go back to an area we've been to again and fight the same dungeon and the same little area over and over and over? And that's what I continue to worry about. So the fact that they did say there would be something new to see is appealing to me. The fact that the major fight isn't going to occur at Coney Island or Roosevelt or one of the other monuments that we've been in 8 billion times already, just as part of our daily grinds and just as part of some of the missions that we undertake to kind of challenge ourselves to get better pieces of gear. I will be very intrigued to see where we go next. But it does leave a very encouraging note, at least knowing that they are continuing to add more season content. The season does end on a cliffhanger. It does leave unresolved. And we leave with this kind of bad feeling in our mouth, this bad taste of wow, this is really what defeat feels like. It's definitely not hey, let's celebrate, we're all great and everybody's good and let's give each other high fives. It doesn't end like that at all. I hope, as I wrap up, and this is just more pure speculation rather than review, I really hope that it's not something super obvious like Agent Kelso being the mole or something like that. I really hope that we do get something more meaningful than that, that there's definitely something that has more heft to it than that. It will remain to be seen. The fact that they did kill Captain Lewis after we were just really introduced to him, I think it was it last season? Was he the villain last season or maybe 2 seasons ago? To see how quickly he changed alliances and became kind of a member of the team. The fact that he sacrificed himself so that they could get Schaefer away and Manny Ortega could get away, I thought was really noble. And I like that. I'm glad that it played out in an echo and not in a cutscene. It kind of forces you to fill in the blanks on some of the action because you're just getting these static images with, the really cool voiceover and the really cool sound effects rather than you watching it. But they did do a pretty meaty cinematic considering that, most of these are just voiceovers at this point now, and you really don't get a lot of new CGI acted out scenes with characters talking and interacting. Typically it's hey, go log into this computer and you're going to get a 2-minute voiceover manifesto that we captured, or an intercepted phone call that we captured between some of the targets of the season over talking with each other. Here you actually get to walk around and see the outcome of a failed mission and see the blood in the halls of the White House and the destroyed buildings and the lost technology and the kind of scavengingness that everybody's trying to find whatever materials they can to get ready to fight because we thoroughly got smashed. I like that. So for that, I thought the season ended on a high note. I'm curious to see what they do next, moving on into the next season. And when it starts, I will definitely be here. I will jump right in and continue my adventure. That said, I think many of us are definitely ready for the Division 3 with a new engine for sure. This one's definitely showing its legs. Maybe some more procedurally generated stuff would be nice in the future. Definitely some new areas to explore would be really, really nice. And final thing here as I wrap up, I thought this was a bug that your character seemingly vanishes and is replaced by this other agent. But as some people have mentioned on Reddit, they actually know who that agent is. I don't know who that person is next to walking around with Ortega. It's not you. I thought it was just a generic model, but apparently it is somebody else. It seems kind of like a misfire. I feel like your character should be there walking around and supporting the action, but instead you just get this random blank stared person watching over the action. So anyways, just last little thought there. Maybe Ubisoft can patch that because it really should be your person and not some rando. That's all I have. I will see you all in the next season. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.